A witch is not merely a figure of folklore or fantasy, it is a concept deeply rooted in human history and imagination. The word itself evokes a spectrum of images, from the cackling hag stirring a bubbling cauldron to the enigmatic sorcerer wielding power, both feared and coveted. Yet to define a witch is to wade into murky waters, where mythology, culture, and morality intertwine. The witch, in essence, is a mirror reflecting the fears, desires, and biases of the society that defines her. At its core, the idea of the witch is tied to the notion of power that is unconventional, often inexplicable, and typically outside the boundaries of societal norms. This power may stem from a connection to the natural world, the mastery of arcane knowledge, or the manipulation of unseen forces. It is power that challenges the established order, and therein lies its danger. Societies have long feared what they cannot control, and witches, as embodiments of the uncontrollable, have often borne the brunt of this fear. But a witch is not simply someone with power, it is someone marked by otherness. Throughout history, those accused of witchcraft have often been outliers in their communities. They might be women who live alone, healers who practice unfamiliar remedies, or individuals whose wisdom and independence set them apart. The witch, in this sense, becomes a symbol of the outsider, a person who refuses to conform to societal expectations and is punished for it. This labeling reveals more about the accuser than the accused, exposing humanity's tendency to ostracize what it does not understand. The concept of the witch also carries a moral dimension. In many traditions, witches are seen as wicked, consorting with dark forces and committing heinous acts. Yet this moral judgment is rarely straightforward. In some tales, witches are protectors, wise women, or seekers of justice. Even when portrayed as villains, their actions often stem from betrayal, oppression, or an unfulfilled longing. The witch's moral ambiguity makes her a compelling figure, one who defies simplistic categorization and forces us to confront the complexity of human nature. Cultural context plays a significant role in shaping the definition of a witch. In medieval Europe, witches were seen as agents of the devil, their powers a perversion of divine order. In contrast, many indigenous traditions view witchcraft as a natural part of life, with both positive and negative aspects. These varying perspectives underscore that the witch is not a universal archetype, but a construct shaped by the values and anxieties of each culture. What one society deems witchcraft, another might see as spirituality or science. The witch also symbolizes rebellion. In a world where conformity is often enforced, the witch represents the courage to defy expectations. She dares to claim autonomy in a society that demands submission, to seek knowledge in a world that values ignorance. This defiance is both her strength and her downfall, for it invites admiration from some and condemnation from others. The witch, in this light, is a paradox, both a villain and a hero, a threat and a beacon. To define a witch, then, is not to settle on a single image or meaning, but to embrace a tapestry of interpretations. The witch is power, otherness, and rebellion. She is feared and revered, condemned and celebrated. Her story is our story, a reflection of humanity's struggle with the unknown and the other. Whether we see her as a menace to be eradicated or a figure to be understood says less about the witch herself and more about the values we hold and the fears we harbor. In this sense, the witch is timeless, a figure as relevant today as in centuries past. Mystery and fear are two forces intricately bound together, dancing on the edge of human imagination. The unknown, by its very nature, has always fascinated and unnerved us. It is the blank space on the map, the darkened corner of the room, the figure we can sense but not fully see. And yet, this tension between curiosity and dread is a defining element of our relationship with mystery. It calls to us, even as it compels us to step back. When it comes to the idea of the witch, this interplay between mystery and fear becomes especially potent, transforming her into a figure of both allure and terror. Mystery is captivating because it promises something beyond the mundane. It suggests that the world is not entirely explained, that there are depths we have yet to plumb and secrets still hidden in plain sight. The witch embodies this sense of mystery. She is often portrayed as someone who understands things the rest of us cannot, a weaver of spells, a master of hidden forces, a keeper of forbidden knowledge. She stands apart from the ordinary, shrouded in an aura of the inexplicable. This is part of her power and her charm. People are drawn to the idea that she might hold answers to questions they dare not ask or possess abilities that defy natural laws. Her mystery becomes a magnet, pulling others toward her, even when they know they should keep their distance. Yet that very allure also breeds fear. What we do not understand, we often suspect. The unknown can be a source of wonder, but it can also be perceived as a threat. The witch, in her mystery, embodies this duality. She is a figure who operates outside the boundaries of conventional understanding, and this makes her dangerous. Her abilities cannot be measured, her motives cannot be fully known, and her actions often defy logic. In a world that seeks to categorize and control, such unpredictability is deeply unsettling. The same mystery that draws us to her also makes us wary. This fear is not born out of the witch's actions alone, but out of what she represents. She is a challenge to the status quo, a living question mark that defies easy answers. The fear of the witch is, in many ways, a fear of losing control of the natural world, of societal order, and even of oneself. She stands as a reminder that there are forces beyond our comprehension, forces that might upend the carefully constructed certainties of life. This is why stories of witches often involve themes of chaos and destruction. They are projections of our deepest anxieties about the fragility of our world. The relationship between mystery and fear is further complicated by our tendency to fill in the blanks of the unknown with our worst imaginings. When faced with a lack of understanding, the human mind often turns to speculation, and fear thrives in this fertile ground. The witch becomes a vessel for these fears, a scapegoat for everything that goes wrong in a community or a person's life. Crops fail? It must be the witch's doing. Illness spreads. Surely her spell is to blame. In this way, her mystery becomes a shadow onto which we project our insecurities and grievances. And yet, mystery also holds the power to inspire. It can push us to ask questions, to seek out truths, and to confront our fears. The witch, as a figure of mystery, challenges us to look beyond the surface, to embrace the possibility that there is more to the world than we can see or explain. She forces us to reckon with the limits of our understanding and the boundaries of our courage. Do we flee from the darkness she represents, or do we step into it, seeking the knowledge it might hold? Ultimately, the interplay of mystery and fear in the figure of the witch reflects a fundamental aspect of human nature. We are creatures of both light and shadow, drawn to the unknown even as we fear what it might reveal. The witch, in her enigmatic presence, stands as a testament to this duality. She is a symbol of the uncharted, a reminder that life's greatest mysteries are often its most profound sources of wonder and its deepest wells of fear. Power and isolation are intertwined in ways that resonate deeply with the human condition, and the figure of the witch captures this dynamic in its rawest form. To have power is often to stand apart, and in standing apart, one becomes an object of fascination, fear, and often ostracism. The witch, endowed with abilities beyond the ordinary, embodies this paradox. Her power, whether real or perceived, grants her influence, but also alienates her from the community that fears what it cannot control. Her story is not just one of strength, but of solitude, highlighting the price often paid for standing out. Power, by its nature, is unsettling when it disrupts the familiar order. In many depictions, witches wield a kind of knowledge or ability that lies outside conventional boundaries. They heal the sick with herbs and spells, manipulate unseen forces, or see truths that others cannot fathom. This power is magnetic, drawing people to seek their help or marvel at their abilities, yet it also sets them apart. Power outside the norm is rarely met with neutrality. It invites admiration from some and suspicion from others. The witch, as a figure of extraordinary capability, is both revered and resented, her very existence challenging the societal structures that depend on conformity. Isolation often follows power like a shadow. The more the witch exercises her abilities, the more distinct she becomes from the people around her. Those who benefit from her gifts may still distrust her, seeing her as both a blessing and a potential threat. Her connection to the unknown, whether through nature, spirits, or otherworldly forces, further separates her from those rooted in the ordinary. She becomes the other, a figure who exists on the periphery, neither fully integrated into the community nor entirely removed from it. This liminal space is where the witch often dwells, a boundary between belonging and exile. The isolation of the witch is not just physical but emotional and existential. To wield great power is often to bear great loneliness. The witch's abilities mark her as different, and in that difference she finds few equals. Those who seek her out often do so out of desperation or need rather than genuine companionship. She becomes a figure to be used or feared but rarely understood. This loneliness is compounded by the narratives that surround her, stories that cast her as dangerous, malevolent, or untrustworthy. These tales, whether rooted in reality or fabricated from fear, further push her into isolation, creating a cycle that is difficult to escape. Ironically, the very isolation that results from her power can also become a source of strength. Cut off from the community, the witch often finds solace and identity in her separation. She turns inward, cultivating her abilities and embracing her role as an outsider. This self-reliance makes her formidable, a figure who draws her strength not from the approval of others, but from her connection to forces beyond the communal. Her solitude becomes a crucible, refining her power and her resolve. In this way, isolation, while painful, can also be empowering, giving the witch a freedom that those bound by societal norms can only envy. At the same time, this isolation comes with a cost. To live apart is to forgo the bonds that make life rich in meaningful friendship, love, and a sense of belonging. The witch's power, while remarkable, often leaves her yearning for connection, a longing that is rarely fulfilled. This tension between strength and solitude makes her a deeply human figure, one whose story resonates with anyone who has ever felt set apart by their talents, beliefs, or identity. The relationship between power and isolation in the figure of the witch is not just a cautionary tale, but a reflection of a broader truth. To stand out is to risk being set apart. To wield extraordinary power is to walk a path that few can follow. Yet in that isolation lies the potential for transformation, a chance to redefine oneself, to find strength in solitude, and to embrace the complexity of being both powerful and alone. The witch, in her balance of these forces, challenges us to consider the cost of power and the resilience it demands. She is a figure of both warning and inspiration, a reminder that greatness often comes with a price, and that the path of the outsider, while lonely, is also one of profound possibility. The idea of the mark has long been central to the mythology of the witch, both literally and metaphorically. The mark represents more than a physical sign. It is a symbol of otherness, power, and judgment. Whether it is imagined as a scar, a blemish, or an invisible taint, the mark signifies a distinction that separates the witch from the ordinary. This symbol serves as a tool for society to identify and ostracize the unusual, transforming difference into a curse. At the same time, the mark carries layers of meaning, revealing the fears, prejudices, and aspirations of those who impose it. The notion of a witch's mark originates from historical witch trials, where inquisitors sought physical evidence of a pact with the devil. A birthmark, a mole, or any unusual feature could be deemed proof of guilt. These marks were said to be the devil's brand, a visible sign of allegiance to dark forces. However, the obsession with finding such marks reflects less about the accused and more about the accuser's desperation to impose order on the chaos of the unknown. The mark became a convenient justification for persecution, a tangible scapegoat for intangible fears. Yet the mark is not merely a tool of condemnation, it is also a symbol of power. To be marked is to be set apart, often in ways that are both feared and envied. In folklore, the witch's mark is a sign of her connection to forces beyond the mortal realm. It signifies a relationship with the unseen, a bridge between the known world and the mysterious beyond. This duality, power and danger, defines the witch's mark as both a curse and a blessing. While it may isolate her from others, it also grants her an identity and a sense of purpose. The mark is a badge of her otherness, an emblem of her role as the intermediary between the ordinary and the extraordinary. On a deeper level, the mark symbolizes society's tendency to externalize its fears. The mark is often imposed by others, a projection of their anxieties and prejudices. It is a way of making the intangible fear of the unknown, distrust of the different, into something concrete. By marking the witch, society attempts to control and contain her, turning her from a person into an idea. This act of marking says more about the marker than the marked, exposing the collective insecurities that drive exclusion and persecution. The mark also serves as a metaphor for individuality and nonconformity. In a world that values sameness, those who stand out are often metaphorically marked as different. The witch's mark, in this sense, becomes a symbol of defiance, a refusal to blend into the crowd. It represents the courage to claim one's uniqueness, even in the face of judgment. This aspect of the mark resonates beyond the realm of witches, speaking to anyone who has ever felt labeled or judged for being different. However, the mark is not only imposed externally, it can also be internalized. For the witch, the awareness of being marked shapes her sense of self. It is a reminder of her otherness, a weight she carries even when alone. The mark becomes part of her identity, influencing how she sees the world and her place within it. While this can be a source of strength, it can also be a burden, isolating her from those who cannot or will not understand her. In stories, the mark often holds a dual role, both a curse and a sign of hidden potential. It sets the witch apart, but also serves as the key to her transformation. By embracing the mark, she claims her identity and her power, turning what was meant to shame her into a source of pride. This narrative of reclamation gives the mark its ultimate symbolism. It is not just a sign of otherness, but a testament to resilience and self-discovery. The symbolism of the mark, then, is rich and multifaceted. It is a tool of oppression and a badge of empowerment, a reflection of societal fears and a celebration of individuality. Through the mark, the story of the witch becomes a mirror, forcing us to confront our own tendencies to judge, label, and exclude. At the same time, it offers hope, reminding us that what sets us apart can also be our greatest strength. The mark, in all its complexity, captures the essence of the witch, a figure of fear, power, and transformation. Misunderstanding the other is a theme as old as humanity itself, rooted in our fear of the unfamiliar and our tendency to judge what we cannot fully comprehend. The figure of the witch has long embodied this misunderstanding, serving as a scapegoat for the fears, anxieties, and prejudices of the society that labels her. In this dynamic, the witch is rarely understood on her own terms. Instead, she is distorted by the lens of collective imagination, her identity shaped by the suspicions and projections of those around her. Her story is one of being seen, but not truly known, a reflection of humanity's broader struggle with accepting those who are different. The witch often represents the outsider, someone who does not conform to societal norms. Whether she is a healer with unconventional methods, a woman living independently, or an individual possessing knowledge deemed forbidden, her difference sets her apart. Yet, rather than being celebrated for her uniqueness, she is viewed with suspicion. This suspicion arises not from her actions but from the discomfort her otherness creates. In the eyes of the community, her refusal or inability to fit neatly into their expectations becomes a threat, a disruption to the fragile order they strive to maintain. This misunderstanding is not merely an individual failing, it is a collective phenomenon. Societies have long demonstrated a tendency to label and ostracize those who challenge their norms or embody their fears. In doing so, they reduce the complexity of the individual to a single, often negative, characteristic. The healer becomes the witch, the independent woman becomes the outcast, and the seeker of knowledge becomes the conspirator. These labels serve as a way to simplify and control what cannot be easily understood. By defining the other as dangerous, societies create a boundary between themselves and the unknown, reinforcing their own sense of identity and safety. However, this process of labeling and misunderstanding is deeply flawed. It is built on assumptions rather than truths, on fear rather than insight. The witch, as the embodiment of the other, often suffers not because of what she has done, but because of what she is imagined to be. Her mystery becomes a canvas onto which the community projects its insecurities and failures. When crops fail, illnesses spread, or tragedies occur, the witch becomes the convenient explanation, a living symbol of all that is feared but not fully understood. Ironically, the misunderstanding of the other often reveals more about the accuser than the accused. The witch's story is less about her nature and more about the fears of those who label her. She becomes a reflection of their distrust of the unfamiliar, their discomfort with change, and their unwillingness to embrace complexity. In this sense, the witch is not just misunderstood, she is misused, her identity co-opted to serve the psychological needs of the community. At the same time, misunderstanding the other has consequences not only for the one who is labeled but for society as a whole. By rejecting and marginalizing the witch, the community loses the opportunity to benefit from her wisdom, her abilities, and her perspective. They trade the potential for growth and understanding for the illusion of safety. This dynamic is tragically self-defeating, as the very qualities that could enrich the community are suppressed or destroyed in the name of conformity. The story of the witch, then, is a cautionary tale about the dangers of misunderstanding the other. It challenges us to examine our own biases and fears, to question the labels we impose on those who are different. What might happen if we sought to understand the witch instead of fearing her? What could we learn from her knowledge, her resilience, and her unique perspective? These are not merely rhetorical questions, but invitations to reflect on how we treat those who stand apart in our own lives. To misunderstand the other is to miss an opportunity for connection, growth, and self-discovery. The witch, as a symbol of the misunderstood, reminds us that difference is not a threat, but a gift, a chance to see the world through new eyes. Her story calls us to move beyond fear and judgment, to embrace curiosity and empathy, and to recognize that in understanding the other, we come closer to understanding ourselves. In this way, the witch's tale becomes a mirror, reflecting not her flaws, but our own, and offering us the chance to see more clearly. Moral ambiguity is at the heart of many compelling stories, and the figure of the witch is no exception. She defies easy categorization, existing in a space where good and evil are not clearly defined. This ambiguity makes her both fascinating and unsettling, challenging the human desire for clear moral boundaries. The witch's actions, motives, and existence often blur the lines between right and wrong, forcing us to confront uncomfortable truths about the complexity of morality itself. Her story becomes a reflection of the shades of grey that permeate human nature, revealing that virtue and vice are rarely as distinct as we might wish them to be. The witch's moral ambiguity often stems from her dual role as healer and harmer. In many traditions, witches are portrayed as individuals with extraordinary knowledge of nature and the arcane. They can cure illnesses, protect the vulnerable, and offer wisdom to those in need. Yet the same knowledge that allows them to heal can also be used to harm. A spell that saves one person might doom another, and the power to create can easily become the power to destroy. This duality is not necessarily a sign of malice, but of the complexity of wielding great power. The witch, like any human, must navigate the consequences of her choices, often in situations where there is no clear right or wrong. This complexity is heightened by the societal context in which the witch operates. Historically, witches have been cast as villains not because of their actions, but because they defy societal norms. A woman who lives independently, a healer who uses unconventional methods, or a seeker of forbidden knowledge is often seen as a threat to the established order. The witch's moral ambiguity, then, is not entirely her own. It is imposed by a society that views difference as dangerous. Her story becomes a commentary on the subjectivity of morality, showing how cultural and societal biases shape our understanding of right and wrong. The witch's moral ambiguity also lies in her motives, which are often complex and multifaceted. Unlike traditional villains, who are driven by straightforward greed or malice, the witch's actions are frequently rooted in pain, loss, or a desire for justice. She might curse those who have wronged her, seek vengeance against a society that has ostracized her, or use her powers to protect herself in a hostile world. These motives are not purely virtuous, but neither are they entirely wicked. They reflect the messy realities of human emotions and the difficulty of making moral choices in an imperfect world. At the same time, the witch's ambiguity challenges the idea that power must always align with virtue. In many narratives, those who hold power are expected to act as paragons of morality, using their abilities solely for the greater good. The witch defies this expectation, demonstrating that power is neither inherently good nor evil, but is shaped by the intentions and actions of its wielder. Her story forces us to question the assumption that those with power are obligated to serve others, and it highlights the tension between individual autonomy and societal responsibility. The witch's moral ambiguity also serves as a mirror for the audience, reflecting our own moral uncertainties. Her choices, though extreme, often resonate with the dilemmas we face in our own lives. How do we balance our desires with our responsibilities to others? When is it justified to break the rules for a greater purpose? How do we navigate a world where doing the right thing can sometimes lead to personal sacrifice? The witch's struggles with these questions make her a profoundly human figure, one who challenges us to examine our own values and choices. Ultimately, the witch's moral ambiguity is a reminder that morality is not a fixed compass but a fluid spectrum. Thanks for watching.